Good morning, class, or good afternoon. The only safe place to be away from COVID is in the woods, so I have moved to the woods in an undesignated, undescribed, yet found place on Earth. In fact, I may not even be on Earth. Today, I'd love to discuss with you just a tad bit the case of Shirley, Suggg, and her husband, Mr. Suggg. There are two things that I want you taking away from that particular exercise, in particular as a clinical psychologist. The first is that language varies from culture to culture. Language varies within races and between races. And you can't get stuck so much on the language that you forget the content. An example of that is that many blacks and many Hispanics, many individuals from historically disenfranchised populations will not say words like diabetes and hypertension. They will say things like sugar and pressure. They will say my pressure is high. They will say my sugar is out of whack. And you have to be able to translate that effectively into the concept of their diabetes and their hypertension is in need of remediation. It is also so important not to pathologize that which is normal behavior within a particular culture or race. It is important to understand the family dynamic of the individuals that you are interfacing with and being asked to intervene with. In the case of Shirley, I can't wait to see all of your answers about Shirley's diagnoses, but Shirley has only one diagnosis, and that diagnosis is a partner relational disorder. Shirley is not depressed. Shirley is not anxious. She doesn't have a substance abuse problem. Shirley is quite consistent with the aged cohort of blacks that she represents. In terms of Mr. Sugg's, I am really interested to see what you guys do with Mr. Sugg's, because Mr. Sugg's, very much like Shirley, has a lot of dynamic and a lot of activity. But a lot of that dynamic and activity is normalized for the culture and the race from which he comes. He too has a partner relational disorder. He too has a communication disorder, potentially with his wife and with his family. But Mr. Sugg's is not inappropriately agitated and or aroused. He is not deviant from that which is the culture that he represents, and he is not pathological. A part of what I want you thinking about in terms of being a psychologist is the definition of psychopathology. The definition of psychopathology includes the following. Whatever is going on must first produce distress. He certainly has distress, but it must also impair functioning. It must have an impact on the way that you function. It is not clear, based on those two criteria, that Shirley or Mr. Sugg's have met criteria for individual diagnoses. The second thing that I want you focused on, particularly as a clinical psychologist, is the idea that looks don't matter. I had you purposely watch me interface with a cartoon drawn on a two-dimensional piece of paper. That was purposeful because sometimes we get so involved in how people look and how they speak and how they interface that we forget the substance of what they're saying. In this particular case, Shirley and Mr. Suggg, their physical attributes were almost irrelevant. Yes, he has a pencil disorder, but find that in DSM. Unless you are straining and think of a somatoform disorder, unless you're straining and trying to conceptualize this as some sort of strange physical disorder that is driven by psychological processes, you will not be able to adequately support psychopathology for Mr. Suggg and or his wife. Again, it is important for me, as is illustrated by this particular exercise, that you not put undue attention on physical characteristics or the language and tone and mannerisms of the individuals that you interface with. It is really important that you stick to substance and content, and that you integrate physicality as a part of your behavioral observation. But unless it's necessary and relevant, you don't integrate it as a part of your diagnosis. I hope this helps. I look forward to seeing you soon. I will have an exercise for you very, very shortly in the second video. Bye-bye.